Hi, I'm Phebe. I was born Karen Beiser. I added the name Phebe in the 70s. And I was born in Hamilton, Ohio, and I've lived in Cincinnati since 1973, I think, 3 or 4. Well, I identify as a lesbian, and my pronouns are she, her. Well, I knew in junior high school, my crush on the journalism teacher, and my good friend had a crush on the gym teacher, so we didn't have to say the L word, but we knew we were simpatica, maybe for women. So I knew, but didn't use the term. Definitely by college, Miami University, Oxford, because I kept having crushes on girls my age, like roommates and things like that, friends of friends. So then I knew, And I did date a few guys just because I knew people would say, well, but, have you dated any guys or been with any guys? I did date a few guys just like because I knew people would bug me about it, but I was not into it at all. It's like, they're boring, so yeah. But yeah, so definitely college when I had Christmas vacation. What year was that? It was right before I turned 21, like a few months before. 1971. I followed a known lesbian. So I hung out with this alternative crowd at Miami University, and there were a lot of sororities, and, some of my best friends were in sororities, but not then. But it wasn't hard to find the alternative crowd. That meant we did drugs, we marched against the latest war, which was the Vietnam War, and things like that. Questioned everything. But there was a known lesbian, Jean, and I was invited up to the lesbian commune she lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, over Christmas vacation. And I went, and she brought me out, and there was this understanding. She would show me the way, the truth, and the light. So then I could officially, right before I turned 21. Yeah, I could officially call myself lesbian. And then one of my friends, anti-war activist and druggy alternative people, then Debbie started following me around, and then we became lovers. So yeah, really, she was like following me around. It's like, what is this? I guess because then I had to bring her out, So things like that. And back then, I will say in Oxford, Ohio, there was in the early 70s. And then I left and came down here. It might have been 74 when I actually came to Cincinnati. But there was one gay group. It was called Gay People of Oxford. And the Spanish professor was the professor who was the, not sponsored, that would be a wrong term, the faculty advisor who opened buildings and was this responsible adult, And he was gay. And I remember for too long, there were 3 lesbians, mostly gay guys, 3 lesbians, and 2 of them were a couple with each other, and then me. And I know one time one of the guys said, maybe they weren't there that night or something, and said, what do lesbians think about this? It's like, I just came out like, the last half a year, so really I don't think I could speak to this, Whatever, I don't remember the question, but it's like, I don't know, So at some point, I graduated with a bachelor in English with certification to teach in 1972, long time ago. And I hung around for a while because I could not go back home to my parents in Hamilton. I feel like I would be a secretary in Hamilton the rest of my life, and I would just be stuck, captured, So I stayed up in Oxford, and Debbie and I sublet an apartment, but then it's like, this town is too small, it's time to move on. And I thought the closest city was Cincinnati. So I came. So 73, I kind of knew Cincinnati was like the closest, safest kind of, it's not too far from my family, and it was a bigger city, and I could still be in touch with Oxford. I know my mother would say, I dated this guy in high school, and I thought for sure he was gay because he was into theater. I was typecasting. But it turned out, I found out later on Facebook, much later, he became a lawyer and he married a woman lawyer. So yeah, say Mike was straight all the time. Anyway, but I know my mother would say on the phone, this might have been late 70s, she said, I ran into Michael's mother at the grocery stores, like, woohoo, you know. He'd never married either, or hadn't at that point. He hadn't married either. Oh, isn't that interesting? I mean, I really thought he was gay. But, and what else? So she would say things. And then at some point, I'm trying to think when. Oh, I know. I remember now. She came up to I had an attic apartment on McMillan Street. And she came up, she would come to visit and she'd have a bag of groceries. So her daughter, her eldest, would not be starving, you know. I mean, I was doing temporary jobs, you know, which worked for me then. She would come, she was walking up the attic steps with a bag of groceries that she brought from home, you know, pulled a care package, you could call it. And she was walking up the top of the steps, and I thought it was up here for a while on the walls, but she got to the top of the steps and there was this big poster and it said, let me get this right. It was a conference in, I think, East Lansing, Michigan, where Lesbian Connection has been published since the 70s and is still going. It was a conference that is called, probably something like Lesbian Feminist Conference, and this kind of modern Amazonian woman on a horse, you know, very pastel colors, beautiful, you know, artwork. And when she gets to the top of the steps, pauses with her groceries and says, Lesbian Feminist Conference, and walked on with the bag of groceries. My mother's very subtle. She was an Aries, she's passed, but she was an Aries who are known to be vocal, and, you know, like people or not, and the same with them. Be outspoken, but she was being subtle there. She just didn't want to have a conversation. She made it clear. But I noticed, okay, yeah, gotcha. And then one time my sister Linda, younger sister, told me, I had a conversation with Mom on the phone, and she said, and so Mom called me Karen for a long time. She said, well, at least I don't have to worry about Karen getting pregnant. So that was her initial acceptance. So I don't have to worry about it. Okay, whatever it takes to get you along the way. So that's me and my mom, yeah. And my stepfather, this was in the 80s, but I'd have to look it up exactly. It could have been late 70s. A panel of lesbians were on, I think it was WCPO, Channel 9. We were on a panel, and it was very risque to even do this back then. And there, who would think that they would do like a little advertisement about the panel? So the channel, like the day before or something, showed this group of lesbians sitting around, you know, sitting there ready to be interviewed, have a conversation about lesbians. And I was told later, my mother told me later, my stepdad said, Shirley, I think I see Karen on TV. And Mom said, oh, really? Like, oh, really? You know, being innocent. But she knew. So whatever, we can see what year that is. I can't remember. Late 70s, early 80s, yeah. Yeah, so then I came out to my stepdad. And my father was far away. They had split, you know, so he didn't know till much later, and he was cool. Decades had passed. The world had become a little more accepting and knowledgeable about these things. Well, I got an apartment in Clifton, that little attic apartment. There was no, I got permission to have a hot plate so I could heat things up because there was no kitchen. I mean, it really was an attic. A hot plate. I had no phone. There was a telephone, back in the day, telephone booth right outside on the corner. And, you know, yeah, no cell phones, I mean, in the 70s. No cell phones in the 70s.
And you're doing temp jobs and things like that?
Yeah. So I thought, what am I going to do? I was so sick of school. I love literature, especially poetry. I fancy myself a poet now. But, yeah, I thought, but I was so sick of school, I didn't want to teach, like high high school. I got a degree to be able to teach. And I thought, no. I at least need a break. I did get on the substitute list, but I didn't do that. Anyway, yeah, temp agencies. And, but that got old after a while. So then in 1976, I got on part-time at the public library downtown and stayed. And then the next year I became full-time and stayed and kept moving up and, got my master's while I was, working. Yeah, so there was a group called a gay community something. There was a gay community kind of group that met at that time. I think it was St. John's Unitarian Church. And it's mostly guys, mostly white guys, but not totally. So I went to some of their meetings in social functions, just to be with gay people, period. But I really was in search for the lesbians. And so there was a group, the only lesbian group I knew of. I remember. I went up to Columbus to a Pride march, and all I can remember.
What year was it?
I'm trying to think. It might have been 75. I'll say 75 or something. 4 or 5, mid 70s. Went up to Columbus with a carload of people, and I remembered some of the women. There were these two they were 15 years older than I was. This older lesbian couple, and they were pretty butch, and they were pretty much socialist, pretty far out for Cincinnati. Anyway, I remember seeing them, marching with them or something. So then I come back to town, and it's later that summer, and I'm at the food co-op, and it's like, oh my God, their names were Virginia and Thrace. I thought, oh my God. Maybe I knew they were in Cincinnati, but I didn't think, you didn't have texts and stuff like that to easily stay in touch. And I didn't have a phone, remember? I had the phone booth, So I said, oh my God, you were at Pride, in Columbus. I met you. And there they were at the food co-op. And they said, yes, we're getting lesbians together, a group, and it was called Labrys. And a Labrys is a double-bladed axe that Amazons use, whether it was a weapon or symbolic. Researchers still trying to figure that out. But anyway, I found them, and I found out when, Sunday some women in Burnett Woods played like touch football or something. I wasn't interested in that, but I wanted to just go be out in nature and meet some other lesbians. Anyway, so they started this group, Labrys. And we do have some files here at the archives about Labrys, some articles. Also, they had a couple workshops at the Student Union at University of Cincinnati. And anyway, so I went there, and a lot of the earlier lesbians I met in the 70s went to Labrys because that was the only thing then. Now there was a group associated with University of Cincinnati too, but I didn't meet them till later. But anyway, a couple things about Labrys. There were, and I had done this with the Women's Liberation Group. Thing about Miami, I'm skipping around back a little bit. At Miami University, hanging with the alternative crowd, there was also, so it was a time, the 70s was a time of liberation movements. And there was a women's liberation group, and I took classes, workshop, free university workshops kind of things. And what was it? Oh, just God, don't get in your 70s, because then your mind, I think my mind is too active for my brain. Oh yes, one thing they did was they were very feminist, consciousness raising sessions and groups, and you would there'd be a discussion about something, then you pair up with people. What's your experience? Did you ever have an abortion? No, I'm lesbian. But I mean, not that lesbians couldn't be bisexual or, get raped or something. But, yeah, it was really neat. It was very personal and talked about things. So anyway, so Labras built on that and had discussions and talk, and then you could get to partner with different people and get to know their life story a little bit. But Labras, two other things. Well, Labras, so there started to be lesbian and independent women's publishers. And Naiad Press was the first, as I recall, on a large scale. And Labras started sending for these early, mostly lesbian, some feminist nonfiction kind of books. And they would buy multiple copies, so some of us could buy the book, or they'd have actually they had like a traveling bookstore. This was quite a few, 5 years before Crazy Ladies bookstore began. So they had a collection of books, and they sold or took to a NOW conference or something. But there was Virginia and Thrace and Martha and Anita who lived here in town. They were both older, and the reason I say that, they had saved some money. They'd had real jobs, not temporary jobs or part-time at the library jobs like some of us. They had saved some money, and they were more radical than most of the Cincinnati lesbians, but they were hungry to be physical in a group with other lesbians. Anyway, the two main couple leaders of the group, were very anti-patriarchy, and people would say, what about my brother? Or I really like my father. I mean, you'd have some really heartfelt kind of conversation. But they thought the answer was to move to the land, to buy some land and be independent. But I always thought, well, what if, they need help building a barn, or can you borrow some equipment? Wouldn't you be talking to those male farmers just to be peaceable, if nothing else? But anyway, I was just glad to have a job. I was looking for a girlfriend. I mean, I was not at that stage of my life to be thinking about being isolated on the land somewhere and working my butt off, So anyway, so they did leave town, both of those couples, and lived on the land somewhere, south somewhere. And the books, this segues into something else. The books were taken over by the lesbian commune that Vic, Kathy, Janet, there were like 5 of us at one time. We had ended up renting 2 different houses in Clifton Avenue and, what is it called? Victor Street off a ravine around there. We call ourselves a lesbian commune. And we had the leftover books, and this was pre-Crazy Ladies. And Marie Dennis, who recently, African-American Black woman, lesbian, who was one of the first to live in start the migration to Northside when it became Dykeside. As the gay guy I bought my house from in Northside called it Dykeside. It's Dykeside. We're going to buy the house. You don't have to convince us, And then Crazy Ladies was there. But Marie was one of the few with a car, and she would be a traveling, kind of continue on a wider scale, traveling bookstore with lesbian books and some feminist books, and take them to NOW conferences or meetings where there'd be women that would buy the books, So that was cool. But I did skip, and it's very important. I don't remember a lot, but the 1973 Pride, since Pride is one of the big topics here, while I'm in the 70s. Well, and they were really too far out, too radical. I didn't say the word separatist. I mean, Amazons were pretty separatist. They would supposedly, Amazons would get together once a year and copulate with guys, so, their generation could go on. I guess if they had a boy, they gave the boy to the guys, and they kept the girl babies, for future Amazon population. But anyway, they were separatists. They felt that you could not, you were just butting your head against a wall to try to save the patriarchy or make any changes. They were pretty radical, really.
How long?
And they left,
How long were you part of Labras before they left?
I would say maybe 3 years at the most, 2-3 years. Yeah, but they left, and then I had Vic, who was one of the first people saving with the archives, says she does consider me the founder. And mostly because she got a girlfriend and she moved to Florida Keys for about 7 years. So she was gone. I said, can I send a box of books, my books? Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so, yeah.
Okay. So Labras, and then you had kind of made a friend group, and then you all rented your houses, moved to Northside.
Exactly. Or no, Clifton, the lesbian commune. There were 2 different rented locations in Clifton. And one thing I have to say, the landlord got mad because there were more people. I was living in the basement at first. Well, just a short segue. I lived in Dayton, moved to Dayton for love, and then the woman was getting her master's at Wright State, and she said, she promised, I didn't want to leave Cincinnati, but she promised when she got her master's, she would move to Cincinnati with me, but we broke up before then, as fate would have it. But, and then some lesbians lived in, not a commune, but some lesbians lived in rented a neat old house in Dayton, not far from downtown. And, okay, Martha, one of the Labras women that left to live on the land, Martha used to be a printer. She had it's an offset press, like really metal, like really serious, heavy duty commercial printing press. And we printed, there's a book called Contemplations, an anthology. Anyway, we literally printed that. She was the one that knew how to do it. But anyway, that lived at the Dayton house. And when I came back to Cincinnati and lived with Vic and the other women in the original house on Clifton Avenue, like west, I guess it'd be going downtown, that kind of part of Clifton, the printing press came with me. I mean, they were committed, like, okay, I'll live in the basement with my cat, but I have this printing press. What are we going to do with it? Anyway, eventually, well, the landlord found out. It was in the dining room, and he could not see this. I can't blame him, really. And Martha came back. I think she was in Virginia then. The farm community had broken up, but she came back and got the printing press. So thank God, because it was quite a thing to deal with. Took up a room. But they were very. The women in that group were very tolerant of my moving in with a cat and a printing press that I didn't know how to use without Martha there anyway. And so let's see where we at. So, okay, how the outside world in Cincinnati felt about gay people. By then there was sort of, I'm an Aquarius, I'm pretty stubborn, fixed in my views. And I had found some gay guys and some lesbians and some tolerant people, worked at the public library, and there were lots of well-read, tolerant people there. It's like, well, I don't understand, but, whatever. They were very tolerant. And so, and if you live in a house with some other lesbians, like your little pod, we felt a little protected. Maybe we were foolish, but nothing bad ever happened, I had groups, Labras for a while, and then the gay and women's group, the met at St. John's, friends, Marie and Northside, starting to, the thing about the 70s, and I often say, I feel very lucky to be in my 20s in the 70s, because it really was a time of questioning. And I mean, if you're the right group, or if you gravitate to that kind of group, political, expressive, arts, drug, experimenting in every kind of way. I just didn't care. I mean, I went to the 1979 March on Washington, the first big gay march on Washington. And sometimes I say gay. Back then it really, gay and lesbian and gay, those were the 2 terms back then until it broadened. But yeah, it's like, fuck it. I have my friends, my mom knows, and she's begrudgingly, she taught me to be independent. I said, hey, I learned a lot of this from you. Oh, yeah, my mother, back in 1950, when I was born, the name was, so my birth name was Karen. It still is legally. She said the mothers were naming Karen was a very popular name. They were naming their daughters, their new infants, Karen Sue. But she didn't want to do that for whatever reason. Aries, independent woman. She called me Karen Jean. And so later on, I threw that back to her. I said, remember, you wanted me to be different or independent or whatever. I could have been a Karen Sue, but no, call me Karen Jean. So I blame it on my mother a lot, yeah. Wow. So when I was living in Dayton, for just a few, maybe 3 years, a few years there. And Dayton's a cool city. Their lesbian group there was called Sappho's Army. I mean, they had the creativity up there. So after the love relationship broke up in the apartment, I found a house to rent with some other women. That was real cool. And we planted some things, some food. We were really pretty poor. Temporary agencies. And some were unemployed. I mean, we shared. And so I was, someone that lived at the house part-time came and went. Her parents were in Trenton, New Jersey, but she was back and forth trying to decide where she was going to live, I guess. Anyway, Amy and I became lovers. And one time in a passionate evening, she called me Phebe, like baby or something, but Phebe. I thought, And so at my temporary agency, that was 70, I think I wrote a letter to the Clifton lesbian commune saying from now on I'm going to be using the name Phebe. And that was in fall of 74. I found that letter somewhere in all of my boxes, yeah. I said, I'm taking the name Phebe. So I was working temporary jobs, and I had a job downtown, and it was like a block from the library, Dayton Public Library. So I went there on my lunch hour, and I thought, I'm going to look up Phebe. It was Phoe, like Phoebus, Apollo, Phoebus. Phebe was the grandmother of Artemis, the moon. And that's when a lot of women were getting very, seduced by feminist Wicca, women's spirituality. It was full moon circles and things like that, goddesses, and I still feel like I am a goddess worshiper in many ways, even though technically I'm Buddhist. Eclectic Buddhist goddess worshiper. Well, the Buddhists have Kuan Yin, the Chinese goddess of compassion, for example. But anyway, so Phebe, so I looked it up at the library, see how it started before. That's when I first started thinking, this is a pretty cool place to take a break at lunchtime. Yeah, it built from that. But I looked it up. Phebe was the grandmother of Artemis, and here the moon and the budding spirituality, and thought, Phebe, I'll take it. And also, it meant shining one. So I took it as an affirmation to be a shining one. I think it helped, really did, because I used to be shyer. Yeah, Amy, and in the last couple of years, she lives in Northern California. We've reconnected on Facebook and written a couple of letters, and it's just, it's really neat.
Do you tell her you still go by Phoebe?
Yeah. Oh, she knows from Facebook. I have Phoebe Karen Beiser, because I'm not hiding anything. Phoebe, Karen is in parentheses a lot of the times, how I handle that. Yeah, Amy, so you named me, Phoebe, So the lesbian commune, actually both the rented places. The later one on Victor Street, we could walk up to Calhoun. There was at that time, probably the one and only lesbian bar. They didn't call it a lesbian bar. I mean, some guys could come with their, lesbian friends or something, but mostly it was women, mostly lesbians. And we could walk there, so that was nice. And it was called Adam's Rib. And as feminists, we thought, this name is so wrong, How can we give them our money? But it was to meet women and go dance and have some beer, whatever. it was it, and it was geographically convenient too. So Adam's Ribs, oh yeah, that was the main place. There was a place in northern Kentucky, kind of out in the rural area somewhere. I can't remember the name. I know the Dinah Issues, local Greater Cincinnati lesbian little magazine, covered things. There were a lot of bars that came and went, and women's ones in particular. So we would go wherever, really, but Adam's Rib was the main thing. And we'd have parties at our house to some extent, but it was pretty crowded with 5 people in a shotgun house, you know. Socializing. So St. John, I know some St. John's Unitarian, and also First Unitarian Church on Reading Road. They were very welcoming. I don't know why exactly. We didn't question it. Welcoming to the Labras women, the earliest lesbian group I was associated with. And it's pretty amazing now to even think about it. There started to be this, so I mentioned quote unquote women's spirituality, and then women's music, which was most largely lesbian. Women's music phenomenon. Well, it started, Alex Dobkin had the album, and these are vinyl, which have come back, Lavender Jane. Lavender is a gay color, you know, purple, lavender. Lavender Jane Loves Women. And we played it constantly in the house in Dayton. It came out then. And Alex Dobkin and some other women, there was a women's music circuit. So there would be concerts. And I remember probably the first band, oh God, I'm going to blank on their name. They're from Berkeley. And, oh God, I'm forgetting. We have the album. Anyway, there was a women's band, a lesbian band from Berkeley, California, and they were doing this women's music circuit way back before there was even hardly such a phenomenon. Oh, I remember they were called the Berkeley Women's Music Collective. See, that's very political and socialist and everything, collective. Berkeley Women's Music Collective, and they did a concert at not St. John's, that's the big one that's used a lot more these days, First Unitarian Church. And it was so cool. That was my first experience, like a lesbian band, out lesbians playing music. They were good, they were fun, they were cute, you know, what else did you need? And
what year was this that you went to Guys?
This would have been, let's see, was it before I went to Dayton or came back? 73, 4, 5, it can be tracked, but the mid-70s. Well, not even almost pre-mid-70s. So they came, it was Labras sponsored. So that was so cool. And then there'd be dances occasionally, but the band coming to town. And later on, there would be many lesbian singers come through town, come to Cincinnati. There was a tavern in the Dayton area called Canal Street. I think it's still around, but a lot of, folk singers and different, kind of outsider singers, these lesbian folk rock singers or small bands, it was a smaller place, but Crazy Lady's bookstore changed all our lives. And there were 3 Crazy Ladies bookstores, and the first 2 were rented locations on Hamilton Avenue, and kind of went from one rented location. For a lot of times it was a tax service place, and then for whatever reason didn't get along with the landlords. Carolyn Dellenbach, who later changed her name to her mother's first name, Carolyn Virginia. Madison, Wisconsin. She went back to Madison. And we're still in touch. She sent some things items to the archive, some early items. Would you, because we're in touch on Facebook, so would you be interested? Oh, yes, definitely. So Carolyn started Crazy Ladies part-time, rented location, then moved like a block down on Hamilton Avenue in Northside to another rented location. And then late 70s and maybe even into the early, maybe most of the 80s. I'd have to check the dates. See, I don't have to check the dates because we have the archives and we can just research, the chronology. But then the rehabbed building, Maureen Wood, found it, and there were, it was an appliance store, and there were homeless, drunk guys living in it, squatters. It needed a lot of work, but she rallied the women's community, basically, and found as many lesbian and women's electricians and plumbers as possible to give them those jobs. And Crazy Ladies, the owned building, began. And much later, 1990, Janice, in the picture across the way here, Janice and I bought a house in 1990 in Northside and lived there for, I think we lived together about 10 years. We were together like 7 years, but then I bought her out and stayed there a little bit longer till I retired, and I found another. It was the gas and electric bill. It was 2 furnaces. Gas and electric bills were terrible. Yeah, I wanted out. But Crazy Ladies, Northside, as my, the gay guy I bought the house from said, "You'll love it here. Northside is Dykeside." I said, "Oh, I know. That's one reason I'm moving here," and Crazy Ladies and everything. So I really miss that neighborhood feel. The very first Crazy Ladies rented, 70, I want to say 79, 78 or 79. Looking at they have birthday week. I'm almost positive it's 79. I've even put together some selected dates over, 79. It is 79, I know for a fact. 79 to 89, I put together like a selective glimpse of lesbians in Cincinnati, like different groups that were around and things like that. 79, and then a few years later moved down the street, and then the bought building, it might be 89, something like that. I have to look. But no, the bought building, God, what is that? It's right by the park. Vandalia, is that Vandalia? Hamilton and Vandalia. You come from Clifton over the viaduct over 75, and there's that. It's the second light, and the park is next. Hoffner Park follows, because you can't turn left. Well, not legally anyway. At the light if you turn right, takes you to Roost Parkside Cafe. Where both of those owners are gay. Mary Croner goes way back, and the guy whose name I'm blanking on, David. Crazy Ladies. So it really was, as I said, more than a bookstore. It was a place to meet people, buy tickets to the Muse concert, to any concert. Authors came to town, like Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon, both of who've passed. They were the first lesbian couple to get married in San Francisco when either San Francisco, I guess the whole state of California, and actually Kamala Harris was Attorney General then, and married couples later on. But Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon wrote a book called Lesbian Woman, and it was one of the first lesbian books available in regular bookstores, Borders, Barnes and Noble, things like that. but they came through Crazy Ladies, and they signed a copy of their book. Very sweet signing to the Ohio Lesbian Archives. Yeah, thank us for existing, for our work or something like that. And Adrian Rich, there was a feeder kind of thing going on. UC had the facilities and the money to like bring in famous writers and poets, essayists and poets like Adrian Rich, and sometimes I hear it pronounced Adrian Rich. But she came to town and she did a reading and a talk at and Q&A at UC, but she also swung by Crazy Lady. That was one of the rented locations, so late 70s or mid, I don't know, before the big store, the big owned building. She came and signed books and met people. Yeah, so that was neat. And May Sarton, I don't know, May Sarton she's mostly a poet, but she did some kind of memoir book. Yes, it was pretty controversial. She was talking about her traveling around the country, meeting people and promoting her book, this one book. And we saw that she called Northside, where Crazy Lady's bookstore was, she called it, she didn't say ghetto, but it was sort of like, it was this rundown section of town. It was like ghetto. Yeah, lesbian gay ghetto, yeah. And we were like, what? Is that what she thought? Because she lived in Maine off the, the ocean, so she wasn't used to, in a little cottage, she wasn't used to urban bookstores, I guess. Crazy Ladies. But anyway, yeah, it was great to live. That was, and then buying the house, I was 40, and yeah, my 40s were really great. This love of my life back then, and one of my most serious relationship next to Kathy now. Janice and I, and the grandiose house, but we loved it, and my first dog, and just the whole neighborhood feel. Even like the straight people, they were cool. You'd see them with their baby and their buggies and their dogs, and it was pretty idyllic, And the old people that had lived there, and poor Appalachian people, and I have Appalachian heritage from my mother's side, so I can say that. I always say I can say that. I got Kentucky in my background. Yeah, it was just a real mixed neighborhood, and some African Americans, but more poor white. And then the yuppies, professionals were coming in, fixing up houses. And the New York Times actually had an article about like gay neighborhoods across the United States, and Northside made that article. And these gay people moved in and were increasing the property values or something. We were just happy. We had to it had a slate roof. We had to refinance for the roof. I mean, we were talking $30,000, and that was back in the 90s. Yeah, $30,000 to get the slate roof replaced. But we both had decent jobs then, so we were young enough. We had time left to pay things off. So later, Pride would conclude. Before it was downtown and in Sawyer Point, and a huge citywide thing. It would start at Burnett Woods, and we would march to Northside and end at Hoffner Park. So Hoffner Park, Crazy Ladies, really Crazy Ladies, Hoffner Park. Oh, there was at one point, there was two lesbians opened a coffee house next door to Crazy Ladies. They called it Wild Iris Cafe. The only problem with the space, they could not cook there. They had soups and quiche and stuff like that, baked goods. They had to do the cooking, make the soup and the quiche at home, and then bring it in. They had a way to heat up stuff. So it wasn't a full-fledged cafe, but it was so neat, next door to the bookstore. And then down the street a few doors was Bullfish's Bar, and Donna and what is it? Oh, not Elaine. Her partner's name I can't quite get it, but anyway, They own this lesbian. They just call it alternative bar. Anybody's welcome as long as you just get along, you know. But lesbians adopted it, you know, bullfishes. So in one block was Crazy Ladies, Wild Iris Cafe, and a neighborhood bar, which was a lot of lesbians. And the magazine used to be called Deneuve, out of San Francisco, national glossy, slick magazine. Deneuve, the actress Deneuve was going to sue them for using that name. She said, that's my name. And so they changed their name to Curve, and it's still going strong, Curve. The Curve women said, we're going to be touring the South, and then we're going to tour the Midwest. If we should come to your community, let us know. Maybe we'll come through. I wrote, and they were going to be in Columbus. I said, you've got to come down to Cincinnati. We have the women's bookstore. We have a little cafe and a bar, all in the same block. And the Ohio Lesbian Archives. And they came up and they saw it. They did a talk. They gave away issues of the magazine. That was a big deal. And I don't remember what year. In the 90s. Maybe late 90s. That was an exciting time. But anyway, the spirit of Northside. Well, Lab Lesbian Activist Bureau was Wendy Winkler, and she's now Sequoia. Wendy Winkler and her partner at that time, Sandy Garcia. And Sandy actually started it, but Dinah, Lesbian Activist Bureau, they got 501c3 status for educational purposes. They worked on some city issues. I think they worked with some gay guys to educate the police, because they were just picking up gay guys in parks, no matter why they were doing anything or not. It was called desensitization of the police. They did some, and trying to get a human rights ordinance passed, and letters to city council and things like that. So pretty, mainstream. But Sandy moved to the Pacific. They broke up. Sandy moved to the Pacific Northwest, Seattle area. And she has since passed away. But Wendy was very smart and vocal. And she ended up being the gay pride speaker on Fountain Square a couple times. And she gave talks different places, very quite intelligent and, I don't know what I want to say, thoughtful essay kind of writing person. And she's still around. And blesses the archives for keeping her speeches. And anyway, but Wendy, at some point, so Wendy and Sandy split up, and she was doing Dinah newsletter by herself, and she asked for help. She said, called a meeting, please, if you're at all interested. I can't do this by myself. I need a group who's interested. And so it's like me, I am, and a couple other people. Holly, Cincy, me, Indian American woman that used the word Emma, I think, pseudonym. And we kept it going. Yeah, and we would, on Thursday morning, so it was social, it was work, but it was a social gathering too. Every couple months, there'd be, we would meet it was a Thursday night. Wearing lavender was optional. But a Thursday night, and because Thursday became like a gay night or something, we would meet at the YWCA downtown, pull some long tables together, and collate, go around and around the table, collate the latest issue of Dinah. And then we had tax-exempt status, so we had I think that's what it was called, with the post office, the main post office on Dalton. You'd have to separate, you'd have to sort after you collate and stapled, and it'd been a couple hours usually, depending how many people showed up. Then you had to sort by zip code and then stamp, this sticker on for different colors and different zip code order. And then you would get a cheaper rate because you had done some pre-sorting for the post office. But that was fun. The women would come out and say, "Ooh, who's that new girl over there? She's pretty cute," you know. And just you see your friends. It was just like this thing. And you'd have hot off the press issue of Dinah, especially if you wrote something, you know, see your name in print. Some of us will do, you know, go to a lot of trouble, see our name in print.
What year did Lab start?
You're going to ask that. I think 70, I want to say, is that 73, 75? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not prepared. So Sandy lived in Toledo previously, and she was with National Organization for Women, and they had a task force, FOSSAL, F-O-S-A-L, was this task force on sexuality and maybe sexuality and lesbianism, I don't know, something like that, but a task force on sexuality. And so then she met Wendy and was moving down Cincinnati, and Fossil reminded her of, you know, dinosaur days, and she just dropped the Fossil, the task force part of it, and just called it Dinah for short. Dinah, yeah, it was kind of complicated, but she moved down here, and that's just called Dinah. It was Lab's official publication, and then became more, you know, really the community beyond Lab, because Wendy kind of kept Lab going as an entity, you know, tax exempt and nonprofit 501c3 status, and would do speeches and some local political things. But then the archives it became the only really vibrant, active project of Lab, like a project and, you know, part of Lab. And so at some point, when Dinah was really a thriving, growing entity of its own, and what was that, 20-some years, 25, I don't know, something like that. Nancy would know off the top of her head. But Archives had got a lawyer to help us, and he said, rather than start from scratch, really, Archives was an integral part of Lab, and you're changing the emphasis. Is still educational in nature, but you're changing the focus. And so Ohio Lesbian Archives took over, adopted Labs, the deceased Lab organization, so 501c3 status, which is great because we can accept donations, and you can, if you itemize, you can count it on your taxes, which I did. I counted a little bit this last year. I know. Ohio Lesbian Archives, I believe it took a little while to do the paperwork and everything, but it seems like it was 2008 or 9, or around then. And luckily there are files here at the Archives that you can look up all this, do the research, even if you lived it, and there's too many years to keep track of it.
So you used to sell or give dinos out at Crazy Ladies, is that right?
Yes. And they were free, and if people wanted them a copy, to make sure they got a copy of their home, they would subscribe, and it was dirt cheap back then, you know, $5, $10, I mean, yeah. Really paying for postage and anything, yes. Yes, and I loved working on it because I could write stuff and have my name in, you know, I could cover, you know, journalism. Well, my first conscious crush was on my journalism teacher in 9th grade, so I think it came to conclusion. Yeah, so it was exciting. It was like the game in town. My activism and creativity and activism rolled into one. It was fun, and you got an excuse to, these lesbian musicians would come to town, or bisexual ones like Holly Near. They would come to town. I get to talk to them. I get to interview them. I mean, most people didn't. It was a lot of work to transcribe from audio tapes, let me tell you. It was a lot of work, but it was fun. You could be or among the people they interviewed, or you could just get a little side interview, whatever. Cover the concert. So who cares about reviewing the concert? I just want to talk to them. groove with the famous lesbian musicians and singers.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's fun. So what's not to like? There was quite a flourishing there. There was Yellow Page, which is actually this orange kind of color. Mimeograph, one sheet. The Yellow Page, that was one of the earlier ones. And then there was a really neat one that didn't last too long, very intellectual and political, To the Root. And they were talking about radical. Radical means getting to the root of something, radical in its most basic definition. And then I have to like them because they interviewed Connie, one of the early volunteers with the archives. Connie and they interviewed us about the archives early. I mean, I don't know when, early on. And then there was Gay Beat and what else? These are Cincinnati proper, actually. Gay Beat and just across the room. Those are coming to mind. Free. Those would be free because the ads would pay for those pretty much. And people say, where are the bars? What's going on? Different businesses, therapists would advertise, and just different businesses would advertise. And and pick. So, we would pick one up, and it's like, we got to save these because, the library and historical societies are probably not saving these, This history will be lost. So, yeah. There was a softball team. There was a softball team, and the one team, we have a trophy that they won, community trophy that they won one season, and they called themselves the Dinah team. Yeah. Because they need a name. How about Dinah? Yeah, they can be Dinah. We don't care. I wasn't big on sports, even watching it so much, but it was cool. There was, a few times I would go check out the girls, quote unquote. I was a feminist, but sometimes I was not a very good feminist with my language. Let's see, what else? The bars, dances. So really, Dinah had a lot of fundraisers, and the fun of fundraisers, coffee houses. And one of our volunteers, Catherine, at some point, she was doing the Instagram post about the archives, and she realized, she had this aha moment. She realized, the coffee houses, she saw these flyers, the coffee houses were not one place. They were not a physical space. Say, right, we rented this church, is it Liberty and Sycamore? Gabriel's Corner. I'm trying to think what church it was, but there's the Angel Gabriel on the rooftop there, or the chimney or something. Gabriel's Corner, and they had a stage area, and they rented it out to groups to use their that room with the stage. And so we had a lot of coffee houses there, and we're talking $5, $10, or $15, or later went up 10, 15, or 20, whatever you can afford, to pay, to donate, and to pay the rent, because the archives started out officially 1989 on the third floor above the owned location of Crazy Ladies. So we had a room on the third floor. Pretty inaccessible. You had to do the stairs. There was an old old factory elevator, but people didn't really trust it, being stuck on it. So we started there, and we paid a nominal amount for rent to Crazy Ladies, just for the electricity, just for having a space. Because when we moved from bookstore number 2 to 3, we told the then manager, Patty, who was a librarian. She was the head of the films department at the time, Patty Callahan. And then she moved to Florida, and started Bridget Books. But now she's out of the bookstore business, but it's in her blood. But we said, Patty, and a librarian should understand, the archives wants one of the rooms. We need one of the rooms in that big building, because the bookstore just needed the first floor. And then there was a meeting room on the second floor, and groups would meet there, like Soul, slightly, my partner, my wife, Kathy, met her 20 or 25-year relationship before me, Gail passed away. But she met Gail at slightly older lesbians. And I would always joke, like, definitely, some of them are definitely older lesbians, slightly older. I guess that was just taste. Cincinnati, conservative tastefulness or something. Slightly older, but that meant over 30. I think at some point they moved it to over 40. Yeah, so groups would meet there. I know Vic Ramstetter and I did, we did an ego trip. We each self-published, had community chest, do a book of my poetry and a book of her poetry. And we had a poetry reading, the launching, in the archives, got the got all the fame, the little bit of money that came from purchases. But yeah, poetry reading in that room. The archives had different ideas for fundraising. Michigan Women's Music Festival was not too many miles to drive, too many hours north of here. And many women went up there. And one time we had a Michigan Music Festival memories or something, a party around that theme. And we had a Halloween theme, anything to just get some donations for the archives and have fun doing it. It was more fun than funds, but we could use that meeting room. And then there'd be a Stonewall Cincinnati rented a room on the second floor. Second floor was prime real estate. We were up on third. You had to really want to come see the archives. Yeah, and there was a counselor that had a room. There was an artist at a studio. So, they helped pay the mortgage and the utilities and the property taxes at the bookstore. Yeah. Really, it was Amazon, and I still get a few things delivered from Amazon. I'm trying not to support them quite as much as I used to. But yeah, that was when the Amazonification happened, because there was a New World bookstore on Ludlow Avenue in Clifton for a long time. New World, like astrology and New Agey kind of books, esoteric philosophies. They folded. Independent bookstores were folding in different towns, and Crazy Lays was an independent bookstore basically. And people thought, you could find some gay books. There'd be a gay history, a gay shelf at Borders and Barnes and Noble. Gays were, the new latest thing. Yeah, I mean, there'd be a specialty bookshelf for gay stuff, gay literature, at big bookstores, and you could just send for it and have it at your door from Amazon. And I think that was before Prime. Prime came later. But yeah, the Amazonification, I think I've read that somewhere. It's not original, but yeah. And so people could get it faster and maybe cheaper, or find used copies, whatever. It just, people they didn't see a need to drive, work full time, then drive to North Side, no matter where they live, whatever suburb in greater Cincinnati, northern Kentucky. They didn't have to drive to North Side to the bookstore to get a book or buy a ticket to a concert. Though they missed the bulletin board, what's happening. Crazy Lace had its own newsletter. We've got 3 huge bins of material that we've saved from Crazy Ladies when it closed. Yeah, it was a meeting place. It was an information place. You made friendships, and sometimes you met a girlfriend. Just depend. But met a lot of it. It was community. You go in and you would know the manager of the bookstore. Hi, Phebe, and just felt really good to go down there and then buy a CD or a book, or just see what's going on and what's coming up. Events, because Dinah would be maybe every other month at the most. And so what would happen the off month that you wouldn't see in the Dinah calendar? You'd go look at the bulletin board. And people would leave flyers and just all kinds of things. We'd leave Dinahs. The books were still there. but they also sold jewelry and CDs and music. So I know they still were selling the other than books, book things like tickets to Muse concert, for example, and music. Local, there were some local musicians too, besides national, and jewelry of various kinds, and buttons, political buttons, and things like that. So the books started sliding first, really, a year or two, but we knew it was going down, and there just were not the people walking in buying things. There just were not. And books were the first to go, unfortunately. And I am such a book lover. When it closed, oh God, I wish I knew years. I was living north side. I don't know offhand. Sorry, these can be filled in for ephemera or something,
I was just going to say.
Yeah, because Crazy Ladies was really good about having a newsletter, nicer looking than some of the Dinahs, actually. Because they'd say new books that we got in, bestsellers, and then their birthday in the summertime, I think July, I'm seeing a birthday week. They would celebrate all week with poetry readings. For a couple years, they had boat rides on the Ohio River, and you have dancing and music and just be fun, something fun in the summertime. They'd have famous authors come in. People would do workshops. And they would really put it all, art exhibits and stuff. That birthday week would be like the week of all year where special things, and they'd put out special money to get authors in, famous national authors in. You can meet or have a workshop or buy their book or whatever, talk to them. And, the way of independent bookstores, it wasn't just Crazy Ladies. Because it was altered, besides lesbian, feminist, lesbian, alternative, gay guys, they were really big, non-sexist children's books. They had a very big collection of that. And they had someone built this like teepee kind of, it was wood though, like a little teepee like shelter for kids would come and they could sit in there and they'd have fun, like going like in the tent, and look at the children's books. I went this one, Mommy, Yeah, they were very pretty community minded though. Lesbians mostly lesbians were on the board, let's put it that way. I was on the last board. Vic and I were on the last board. That was sad, yeah. They always had a lawyer or two, and, it was like, dissolving, The 73 Pride, I was still hanging around up at Oxford after graduating from Miami University, and a carload of us came down. We found out about it, probably through Gay People of Oxford, probably got a notice or something. And we were like so excited, the big city, hey, we'll go Pride, let's make an appearance. Marching anti-war was one thing, but this would be joyous, be with other gay, quote unquote, gay people. So we came down, and it's a little hazy because it was like literally 50 years ago. It's 2023 now. And I was 23 instead of 73, but I remember how excited we were, and we came down, and I think it met like Washington Park. I'm not real clear of the specifics. Washington Park, and marched to Fountain Square. And there were not very many of us that marched, like 25, 50, way under 100. Not very many people. I don't know. Compared to now, tens of thousands, downtown in Sawyer Point Park. But anyway, so there was a march to Fountain Square, and I remember being heckled and some Christian fundamentalists, as always. Some things never change, but we didn't feel like, attacked. Verbally attacked and prayed for, but not, physically attacked. And it ended on Fountain Square, and I met some lesbians for the first time. That probably is when I found out about the wider WIDER, wider gay group that met at St. John's Unitarian Church, because that was a place to go once I moved down here, probably the next year or something. But yeah, it was just exciting to be, to know there were a whole bunch of gay people in Cincinnati, where I knew I was going to move to, leave Oxford behind, hanging around. It was just exciting to have such an experience, just to march, a short march to Fountain Square, and to be there. And it was more gay guys than women, but that happens a lot. And but I remember some people, a couple that I met, that one of them wrote for Dinah later on, and that reconnected with. And I think Vic Ramstetter was there, but I didn't meet her then. I mean, but it was just exciting. There were a lot more lesbians than there were in Oxford, I can tell you that. Anyway, it's just exciting. Like, there's some people feeling free enough to be, out. I mean, literally out, publicly out. Yeah. Well, I think there was a University of Cincinnati student group, or I think it was called the Gay Alliance or something. I'm pretty sure Gay Alliance. And then there was a kind of a community, broad-based group, mostly men, mostly white men at the time, but there were some lesbians, there were some black guys, as I recall. And they met at St. John's, maybe once a month. And then I met the Labras. I talked about them earlier. Labras, more radical lesbian group. So there were 3 groups. I mean, that's pretty amazing. But they didn't have newsletters or anything like that. I mean, and one thing we have to remember, there were no smartphones back there. There was no widespread internet or cell phones or anything like that. So flyers were the way. Mimeograph, or go to a copy shop, copying Xerox shop, to get flyers, leave flyers in the bars, or Clifton by Raiders. There'd be a physical kiosk where you can post flyers. So that was, was the way to spread the word. And phone, landline, telephone calls, and spread the word, stuff like that. And that's how the archives, the file folders are filled with community events through these flyers. It was the grassroots news, news way to spread the news. So mostly to mix with like the gay guys in particular, and even some of the, I don't know, how shall I say, lesbians that were not very political, let's say it that way. Like Labras was pretty political, pretty radical even, though they were open to all. But when you dug down, you found out their philosophy was patriarchy sucks. We went out of here into a rural patriarchy instead, yeah. The main time I ran into other gay people was, besides my buddies in the lesbian commune and some friends and acquaintances, was prides, and then occasionally bars. Like, I don't know, I can't remember when. What is the one on Pete Rose? I just blanked on the name. Yeah, the Dock. The Dock was probably the longest lasting. And there were lots of little bars that came and went, even some women's spaces, smaller, less, they didn't last as long. Money, I'm sure, financially just supporting it and paying the rent and keeping it going. But going to bars or Pride was really the big community celebration, the march and the afterward speeches, and then anything else afterwards. And also, like, I remember a rally. Jerry Falwell was this fundamentalist that was very homophobic, and anti-feminist everything, everything against what we believed in. And he was coming through Cincinnati, and there were phone calls and flyers, meet at City Hall on such and such a night. We're going to have a rally, anti-Falwell rally. And so things like that, rallies. It's pretty spontaneous rallies, political rallies and things. You would meet other, allies, not just gay people, but allies, political allies. So there were social components to that, let's put it that way. Just being at the rally and shouting out and seeing who was there, and afterwards maybe going to a bar or something. But one thing about the bars for women, well, for two things really, and you're keeping track too. 2 points. First, remember that in general, very in general, and because of socialization and then just patriarchal notions, men tended to have better paying jobs in general than many women. Just the jobs that were available then. Secretary, nurse, teacher, maybe librarian. So men could afford to buy, drinks at the bar every weekend or something, and a lot of the women couldn't, especially if maybe they had been heterosexual with a man and had kids, and then sprouted forth as lesbian or bisexual, and they had childcare to take care of them, things like that. You had other things in the way, obstacles. So bars, so that, the money factor, and then also at some point, probably ask when, let's see, 90s, well, the communes were, lesbian commune was heavily 70s, really. A couple women in the commune household were, this was the first I knew of it, and it became more widespread, called themselves recovering alcoholics. They felt that they really had a problem drinking too much wine and not being responsible and wasting a lot of money and saying things and doing things that maybe they wouldn't if they weren't drunk, and they felt like their life was there's one of the steps, my life is out of control, chaos. Anyway, half of the women in the household were recovering alcoholics, and so they did go to Adam's Rib. That was the main bar early on. They did go, but sometimes it would be more difficult for them emotionally, and just they don't want to slip up and have just a sip of a beer or something that could start the slippery slope. So there was that issue, and more women did deal with dependency on alcohol in particular was big. So there would be some women that just didn't want to go to the bars. And we like coffee houses. The bars would be so loud. It'd be exciting, go dancing, but then you leave, have a drink or two, dance, and then leave. But to actually, if you met somebody you wanted to talk, and besides hearing her name, you really couldn't have a conversation in many of the bars. And they're set up to be stimulating with the music, loud music and all this. So like Dinah and the Archives fundraisers would be coffee houses generally and have talent. People would play guitar, read poems, do short skits and things like that. And we would raise some money, pretty easily fund money to pay the rent and just go towards costs. And so coffee houses, women felt a little more comfortable, especially coming by themselves, come and have coffee or tea and sit at a table and watch the entertainment. And it wasn't so sexualized, you know what I mean? Like at bars too often can be. So, yeah. So women and we had the women's concerts and Crazy Ladies based activities and stuff like that. So really pride and the marches and the rally and then political rallies and, special events like that. But pride was the big one where we have this many, 10,000 gay people in Cincinnati. Every year there'd be more and more, and it was very exciting. Yeah, very exciting. And skipping way to current times, 2015 was very exciting because same-sex marriage was the law of the land. And it wasn't even a big issue for me because, kids, gay people committing suicide and kids on the street. I mean, there were so many really urgent life issues. But and I did end up getting married, but 2015 March downtown to Sawyer Park after the last regional courts in Cincinnati. Then it went to the Supreme Court. Yeah, it was exciting. That was like, wow, so gratifying, kind of amazing and gratifying. Yeah, so that made that Pride very special. Yes. Yeah, there was Article 12 and Issue 3, and anyway, yeah, that the city, and it was the city limits, city passed put on the ballot for people to vote, and they voted. They thought not having gay people, I'd say gay for short, gay people just not having them discriminated against was special rights. Were some special rights. These people want special rights, and that passed, and then later it got defeated. But when it passed, it was sometime in the 90s, and because I remember Crazy Ladies, I remember those signs, put sign in the yard and did a little, outreach and stuff like that. But we really felt defeat. I mean, Pride stopped. That was maybe the main reason some Pride stopped then, because we felt we were attacked, really, literally, legally attacked. We didn't have rights because we were special, and we shouldn't have special rights, So that happened. But the Prides that are most memorable and that I loved, and I know, and Michael Chanik and I have talked about this, and he had the idea to do a website listing Prides. And I remember years ago, he said, what does the archives have? Can we piece this together? And I literally went to my old manual paper calendars of various sizes and messiness. Because even if I later didn't, like the downtown Prides, if I didn't go, I still knew when Pride was. If I end up not going just because I was tired, not in the mood, or didn't have people to hang out with or something, whatever the reason. I knew when for Dinah work, and just to know, this is a big event. So I would always have it on my calendar when Pride was, and I made a note where it was. So Michael and I, pieced together what we remembered and what we knew from the Dinahs and my calendar and his calendars and his sources. And he put together that website that is so helpful and has expanded to some archival history kind of pieces too. So people get a taste of what the archives is wanting to save, that we do save and wanting to save. But before it went downtown and Sawyer Park or Point, Park, I think. It was in Northside. It went from Burnett Woods and Clifton, and I marched most of those. And I marched a few of the big downtown ones, but I was getting older, and it was a zoo. You had to arrange how we're going to get back and meet people and all this. It was kind of a lot more logistics were involved. So the later ones I tended to watch the parades than march. Though Vic Ramstetter, early archives organizer, and we were Pride marshals. Now they started having 3 and 4 and 5 marshals each year. So we were marshals 2 different years. I know one was 2013, and I forget the other, maybe 2008 or something like that. But because of the archives. And to get some women in there too, honestly, some lesbians in there. So we were marshals, and we got rides those years, in a convertible one time, then in these little Scott with the archives, this caboose kind of thing in the rain. We were so glad we were in the caboose getting a ride. Again, we were getting older, and we got a ride. So, and be in the parade and do the Queen's Wave and all that stuff. But I really loved when it was Clifton to Northside. Like I said, that was a more manageable walk for me, and it was fun. It wasn't far, and I lived in Northside, and Crazy Ladies was there, and it was at Hoffner Park, where it ended at Hoffner Park. From Clifton to Northside, and it was just long enough, like a little neighborhood, sort of like the Northside famous infamous Northside 4th of July parade. It's more neighborhoody and fun and funky. It just felt more funky and not, it didn't have a lot of money or corporate sponsorships or it wasn't complicated like it is now, and it needs to be to a great extent to do that big a scale. But no, it was easier, and it was fun in neighborhood, and I ended up in my neighborhood where I literally lived, so what's not to like? And Crazy Ladies, and saw people I knew, and yeah, so I love those early, say what years they could be traced. It's on, look at the website. What's it called? CincinnatiPride.org,
like
I think.
Pridehistory.org.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to be using it as a framework for my documentary.
Yes, and it gives, so it's not 50 consecutive years because there were breaks. And I know there was a break in the 90s somewhere. I just don't remember these dates. But because of the ordinance saying, it's okay to discriminate against gays and lesbians. Like, thank you very much. Now we don't know who, we'll find out who our friends are and which coworkers, voted for this trash, and which didn't, though, most of mine were pretty tolerant, But yeah, so I'm fond of the earlier ones. And I was in my 30s then, and then later you got 40s, 50s, and it was a lot more work. It was fun. I would get my ex and good friend Janice out of the assisted living, Scarlet Oaks, and we remember a couple years, and we went downtown and watched the parade coming through downtown. It was fun, and that was about it. The last couple years we did that. And then, of course, last year, the archive sold some duplicate books, so that was wild to drag the books in, to collaborate with the Gay Ohio History Initiative out of Columbus. That was exciting to team up with them, and it was very exciting, but it was exhausting trying to find the table, get the books in and out and all that, But it was more team, rah-rah, archives, and not Dinah so much, archives, and raise a little money with, who needs 5 of the same lesbian mystery, People should be reading it, passing it on. No, I just went. I work on Dinah all the time. Work full time with the public and Dinah's. Like, I just want to go have fun. Go have fun and enjoy it, Yeah, so as far as prides, and I don't know how many there were over those many years, but I marched or participated. I'd say active participation, probably about 2/3 of them. More recent ones, I might go to watch them come into the park and walk around, the park and see who I see and buy a beer and this and that. A little more light participation light. Yeah, maybe about 2/3 over we're talking 50 years. So. Yeah, but they were always exciting. Because the one time a year you see, all these people, out of the suburbs, and now I'm a suburban lesbian couple myself, but people like out of the woodwork, like, who are these people, or who are these lesbians we never knew existed from, not oldsters from Crazy Ladies days and stuff like that, strangers, like, wow. And it felt so good. It's amazing. Like, yeah, we really are a big portion of the population in Hamilton County. I would never have imagined that we could be this open, such an open part of the community. And here, Cincinnati Magazine covers gay stuff, or LGBTQIA plus stuff, articles, and even the Enquirer. I don't get the Cincinnati Enquirer anymore, but we're just like most people have, let's say, a gay person in their family, know a gay coworker, neighbor. People know LGBTQ people are out there, and most people know of a person, or even have one of us in their family, or their daughter's married to one, or something like that. And that's why way back, decades ago, said, come out, and you'd hear that. You say, I'm so sick of hearing that. But it was so important, like, come out, because people didn't think they knew. Oh, they didn't think, for a long time, they didn't think they knew a gay person personally. It's like, you do. What about that uncle that never married? Isn't he kind of, isn't that suspect? Or, co-workers that don't talk about their weekend. They're just hiding for good reason, probably. Anyway, so all that coming out from the 70s on, people started taking it, seriously. And now there might be 200,000 this year. That's amazing. Yeah. And allies too. And let's say there are a lot of allies that march.
Yeah, sure.
Too. So, and that's good. Allies are always good to have. Yes. Yes. Well, I knew Jason. Quite a few people knew this guy, Jason, and we have his obit in the archives files. I had met him, real talented, creative, musically, theater, talented, and very cute and cuddly gay guy. And there's a picture of him with this little cat. Anyway, I met him, the St. John's, the gay group that met at St. John's Unitarian. And he was just, and I used to hitchhike still a little bit up and down Clifton Avenue, and this gay guy would pick me up. He said, "I'm glad I'm picking you up because there's some people out there, This gay guy that I just knew from the meeting, I didn't know more than his first name, really. A couple gay guys, and I just didn't really socialize much with them, but they were like adoptive brothers or something. And unfortunately, Jason did get AIDS and die, so he's like the one. I'm lucky there's just one person that I knew personally, like that. But mostly it was, I know there was an ACT UP group in Cincinnati. There was a small group of people that did some demonstrations in Cincinnati, but I was not a part of them. I knew of them. I would see coverage in the local gay newspapers. I know it was sort of like when no special rights for homosexuals, when that city law passed for a while. It was like that. Like it was quieter. It was like people were not extroverted and happy out there. You could just sense that there was sadness. You could sense it. And I don't know how it affected. There probably weren't some prides in there. I don't recall offhand, but I would say that probably counts for a couple missing prides. The gay guys would know that better probably, because they lost so many friends and acquaintances. There were groups in different cities, and since I had a handful of people called Blood Sisters, some lesbians would give blood with the gay guys dying of AIDS in mind. I don't know how that worked. If they say this is for AIDS, save this blood for AIDS patients. I don't know how it worked or how they arranged it, but they did give blood with in memory and honor of these guys that had AIDS. Blood Sisters. The big theme is coming out, being seen, no longer invisible. So that is always there. It's celebratory. It's fun. You see more diversity every year. I mean, of every kind. Trans, drag queens, Black people, Hispanic people. I mean, and allies. I mean, just every type of person or ally. It's just so, for me personally, it's so big. It's, you really have to make arrangements. You can't just like drop by or something. You really, you have to have a strategy to leave. Park your car. How are you going to leave when you got hundreds of thousands of people? Or what part of it will I partake in? Or it's more partly because I'll use my age as an excuse, and partly just the logistics and tiring. I just can't celebrate late into the night like I used to. But I always want to watch or be at the park later and see the booths and things like that. But like last year, I I just wanted to get something to drink. And the people at the table were like, she's been gone a while. I said, I went to like this middle area and was in line for a snow cone for like a half hour. And that doesn't count getting through the people to get there and back. It was like, why didn't I bring water? I was not thinking, it was just, it wasn't, at that point, there were just so many bodies to get through. We need a bigger space than Sawyer Park. Where could that be? Take over Kings Island. I mean, they do have the Kings Island things, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Rides and drag queens mostly. I mean, I wouldn't need it more broadened myself for Kings Island. I went a few years, but it just didn't do it for me. I don't know how big, or have a series, have several events or something. I don't know. It's just gotten so big. For me, it's a little unwieldy, I would say. And I said, it's nostalgia, but the old Northside, when I lived in Northside, which I can't afford my house that I used to have now. The property values have gone up. That neighborhood feel, sort of like Northside 4th of July parade and that's big. You're getting pretty big and pretty many people watch it. For me, it's so big, but I'll do whatever parts I can do, like physically and emotionally, and I'll just, strategizing. I'm not against LGBTQ plus community getting money, donations from corporations and others, mostly corporations. I'm not against it. Is there, it doesn't look like there's strings attached, like like Tennessee, no drag queens, children are around, come on, I mean, as far as I've heard, there's no strings attached, really. I guess you can't get totally nude. If a lot of people did that, they might rethink their giving, I don't know. But, yeah, it doesn't look like strings are attached. It's just, no, I mean, things have really changed. What can I say? Things have really, really changed. To me personally, I like the funkiness of a friendly neighborhood, more, neighborhood, or maybe several different neighborhoods. Northside and Clifton will share one again. There could be a central big county-wide one or greater Cincinnati-wide one, and different neighbor, or East Side Pride and a West Side Pride, I don't know, whatever, however you want, whoever's up to doing some smaller ones, or events during the week, maybe more events during the week, and not put it all just in that one day, you know what I mean? It's a lot of work too. I mean, I saw the volunteers bringing our car in and telling us where our table was to sell books, stuff like that. It was a lot of commitment. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe it doesn't have to be that hard. I don't know the answer, but except more things during the week, some smaller things during the week, events during the week. Mm-hmm. And to some extent there are, but maybe cross over the Purple People Bridge into Northern Kentucky. Now see, I've gone to the Northern Kentucky one a couple times, and that was a nice neighborhood. It was more manageable, to watch the parade and then go through the park and this and that. It was kind of more like the old days for us oldsters, that. But it's going to grow and get bigger too, and who knows? Maybe cross the bridge. They could close off, I don't know, a bridge besides the Purple People Bridge and have a intrastate thing,
Yeah, there you go.
Somehow, I don't know.
When Pride was in Northside too, did you ever go to the GLBT Center?
Yes, and when I retired in 2006 and didn't have much to do, I volunteered there for a little while, a couple months, mostly answering the phone and letting these young guys off the street use the computer, because the Northside Branch Library, all their computers internet was in use, and so they came down to the, gay center just to use the computers, which is fine, it was like my job, answering questions on the phone. But it was too quiet. I needed a little more excitement. So I did it for a little while, but the people that came in person were young white guys that wanted to use the internet. When I was there, now I know they had meetings and discussions. I don't know if they showed films. They had some events, and I didn't go to those, but I was looking for a place to volunteer. No, most rewarding was on the phone to refer, and they had some information. They were looking for this kind of service. Here's a group and their phone number, their website. Yeah, it was okay, but like I said, it was too quiet. I guess I was there. It was a Monday night or something, off night or something. I don't know. It just I didn't feel very as used as I should be to volunteer. Yeah, but nor did I want to join their board either. Something in between. Yeah, but it was neat that their physical space. There was Crazy Ladies, Hoffner Park, and then the GLBT Center, whatever it was called. It was nice to have a physical space. And right there, north side, I mean, we could have taken the whole block as far as I was concerned. A couple blocks, yeah. No, but I do remember a Adam's Rib story. I guess the 70s. Someone came up to me and shouted out loud my real name, which it was okay. We were in a gay bar after all, mostly lesbian bar. Said, Karen Beiser. I thought, who the hell is this? I had to look. She said, Barbara, I'll say she's pretty old. Barbara Wallabeck. I was like, oh my God, she was my friend from like 9th grade in high school. She had the crush on the gym teacher, and I had the crush on the journalism teacher. Here's Barbara. She said, you look the same. I was pissed. I thought, I look so much better now. I can't believe I look a nerdy 9th, 10th, 11th grader. No, I look much better, Barbara. And if I were not so nonviolent, I would punch you. Yeah, anyway, it's like, no, it was neat to run there. Oh, cool, it shouldn't be too surprising. But when she thought I looked just the same. Well, I mean, I guess I still look young, but I was only 21, 23 or some 24. Anyway, I was still young, but I looked much better. I like to think that anyway. I relied on that. So that was not fun. Like, thank you. Yeah. A fun job I had at the public library way back. It was my first, full-time. I went from part-time to full-time there. So it was late 70s. The head of the department, I won't name the department, how's that? But the head of the department was gay. He didn't know that everybody knew it, but everybody pretty much did. But he was gay. He was open to me and some other people. And then I met Joan. I was a library assistant, and Joan was a librarian, and she was like 15 years older than I. And she was blonde. I usually don't notice blonde so much. But anyway, she was blonde, but the blonde Amazon, she was, ooh. Anyway, we were doing inventory together in the stacks. It was so much fun just being with Joan in the stacks, doing just her and me bonding. I mean, it's really sick. But we asked, can we do inventory together again? It's like, this is too suspicious, Yeah, what's going on here? Anyway, Joan's husband, I mean, they raised both of their kids were grown up and in college at that point. Her husband was gay and fighting it religiously, bisexual, whatever, but really gay and fighting it. Anyway, at some point, like, let's do this or hobby, she just couldn't get him to be fun, do anything, get out of the house, do a hobby or hiking or whatever. And she kind of gave up on him. But anyway, she was attracted to me. We were attracted. And I wrote a poem. Is this about me? Yeah. And she invited me to UC to, who knows what it was, some musical thing. I don't quite remember. But sitting next to her, and we kissed in the car. Anyway, we lived together for a year and a half or so. We, rented an apartment in Clifton. But then she left me for someone more her age. She went to that slightly older lesbian group and met someone more her age. But you know what? that did not last long. And she told me later she thought about trying to get back together with me, but wasn't going to happen. But that was gratifying. But she passed away this past year. She was like 80. Oh, 80's like the scary age. It seems like, yeah. But that was a juicy library story. It was fun. And, we knew who the other ones were. And it would be kind of wild there, but more undercover. And one time I was going to a Pride, some rally. It wasn't Pride, I don't think. Some rally. And I went outside. I had my sign outside. It said, maybe it said gay something, gay rights or something. And this kind of nerdy old lady librarian, never married, who knows. Mickey was her nickname. Mickey she was coming back from lunch and I was standing there probably trying to figure out what am I going to do with this sign now that I have to go back to work. I had a long lunch hour or something. And she said, oh, to each her own, to each his own. I think she said his, politically incorrect, but to each his own, so I mean tolerant. I don't understand, but hey, who am I to say? 76 part-time. Then I went full-time in 77, government and business department. And where the gay action was. And they're gone. Either out of the country or past, Then, I was secretary and they kind of made me a paraprofessional. The director of the main, let's see, what was he? No, he was the deputy. They had deputy librarian. And he was next, there was Mr. Hunt and Mr. Epstein. Oh yeah, I came out to Mr. Epstein. There's a story. He passed away too, so he won't care. This was a true story. He was the deputy librarian. He's the one, like the boss, supervisor, directly over the department heads, managers. Anyway, I was his secretary. He had assistants, so I was her assistant and his secretary, basically. But they kind of expanded it, moved me up a little bit because I was interested in library school, but I wasn't quite there yet. And I gave messages to the managers, oh, here comes Beiser. There's some meeting, or I'm in trouble, or get that report in, it's due, So the administrative office, that was kind of interesting. But then I started taking classes, and I was in the education and religion department. I don't know if they still have those together or not.
Art and music. Education,
religion, and I was, and that, yes, art and music was we were across the hall across buildings, really. That's when I was taking classes. That's where the internet, we got internet and could do internet searches, but everybody else was older and they, kind of wary of it. And I was taking classes like, of course, And Susan said, I would do the education, well, you had educational and psychology people researching the Eric microfiche, so educational and psych abstracts. So they'd have searches with keywords in the field of education or psychology mostly. And it's cool. And there was an external modem, and you turn it on. Those were the days, let me tell you. And it would go, all these noises, weird noise.
They used to make the craziest.
Oh my God. And it'd be fun. I mean, I learned how to do it and did it and was taking a class in school, and I got to do that, and that was exciting, otherwise government documents, cataloging government documents and stuff like that. Yeah, so that was fun. And then I was the grants librarian. Yeah, for several years.
Do you remember what year that was?
80. Well, it was before I was assistant manager 13 years in history and genealogy. And that was, I retired 2006. What's 13? 83. So that must have been 83 and 13 is 96. No, 93. Probably early 90s. Maybe 4 years or something. Grants librarian, and you did two talks a month, general, the funding world and, proposals. But things have changed so much, yeah. But did that, and then I was the last 13 years, assistant manager of history and genealogy with Katrina and all these. I've heard Doug has passed away. Albert's still there. Colleen's retired. Albert and Colleen have retired.
Albert Hallenberg.
Yeah, Hallenberg. He was a good guy. Oh, yes, and my story about Albert and I, one time in the back room, we were off desk duty. One time, I don't know how, you talk about different things. He said, he was talking to somebody else, but, was there. He said, oh, I had such a crush on Stevie Nicks of Fleetwood Mac, Such a crush on Stevie Nicks. I said, I did too. And the vamp, come on, the gypsy, woo, and scarves and veils, hey.
She was hot.
She was, I said, I did too. It's like, cool, he knew. It's like, cool. Haters quit hating. But it's like, yeah, even now, same-sex marriage, to hold hands, walk down the street, you got to be, there's still that vigilance factor. There is. Clifton, Northside, not so much, but still. I'd say, yeah, I think there does need to be physical space or some coffee house frequented by alternative people. There probably are some, but I think there needs to be some dedicated, let's say, gay quote unquote, gay spaces, physical, and the archives can be everything, but we can be a lot, we can, especially with new space, room to move, tables, chairs, comfortable section. Yeah, like a coffee house. I don't know, just more, besides bars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'm the coffee house generation. Yeah. I think people kind of by attrition, maybe, and just reading in the new coverage coming out, and that there are articles, even if it's Pride or Stonewall anniversaries, still there's coverage in the media now, and people do have a gay aunt or uncle or neighbor, co-worker, friend, whatever. So there is more tolerance. In general, there's more tolerance. Some neighborhoods more than others. Some people, of course, more than some working places more than others. So there's more tolerance, but it's slow going. It's slow going. Yeah, it's chair squeaking. Yeah. What do I wish for? Yeah, more tolerance. It could be more tolerant. It's Cincinnati sort of like a big little city, it's a city, but there's so many pockets of neighborhoods, and they can be very, they can really be different, they vary quite a lot, which is mostly good, but not totally. Some neighborhoods I would not live in, let's put it that way. Yeah. So, and this Cincinnati.com could cover more LGBT things. More media coverage and more openness at establishments. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, it's more of the same, more pride, pride all the time. Well, more openness in regular life. Yeah, when it's not a event time, holiday time, holiday time or something. Yeah. Yeah, more tolerance and openness. So it's not such a big deal, really. Yeah. Celebrate your LGBTQIA and letters that aren't yet invented or created. Celebrate the people and neighbors and coworkers in your life that are a little bit on the edge, still a little bit on the edge. Yeah, that are different, and they're just being themselves, coming into their own being themselves, and just, you don't have to understand, but you have to accept. Yes.